Here are the headlines for Monday morning, August 19, 2024. Vast stretches of America are so depressed that they look like something out of a horror movie. A growing number of Americans believe the United States is experiencing an economic recession, with 59% thinking so due to their own personal struggles. Many communities across the country are plagued by poverty, homelessness, violence, theft, and addiction. In some areas, such as West Virginia, nearly 30% of residents struggle with drug addiction. The economic downturn has led to store closures and widespread unemployment. As prices for basic goods like food and car insurance continue to rise, a significant portion of the population cannot afford necessities. The most dangerous question of 2024. What if Kamala Harris isn't an idiot? Politicians in the United States are employing destructive strategies as policy, rather than due to incompetence or stupidity. The goal is not to put people in new homes, but to force them into smaller homes or rented spaces subsidized by the government, ultimately leading to a preferred outcome of city living with no food security, real security, or constant surveillance. They will use ruinous fiscal policies to run out the clock on Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell and bring about a communist revolution, increasing the possibility of full-blown civil war exponentially. Lebanon plunged into darkness as last operational power plant runs out of fuel. A severe power outage has plunged the Lebanese capital and entire nation into darkness since midday Saturday due to a crippling fuel shortage at the Zahrani power plant. The shutdown affects essential facilities such as airports, ports, water pumps, sewage systems, prisons, wastewater treatment facilities, and drinking water pumping station. Lebanon's energy minister, Walid Fayed, expects regular power operations to resume within 24 to 48 hours. Meanwhile, new gas shipments from Egypt are expected to arrive soon, and Algeria has offered emergency fuel assistance. The economic and electricity woes in Lebanon have been exacerbated by years of mismanagement, corruption, and elite cronyism, which have led to energy shortages and rolling blackouts for at least the last 2 years. Ukraine must pay Germany back for damage from Nord Stream bombing, Bundestag lawmaker. The Nord Stream sabotage narrative is unraveling as mainstream media now admits that Ukraine was responsible for the attack, not Russia, and that the Central Intelligence Agency had involvement or at least foreknowledge of the operation. The revelation has led to a shift in Germany's stance on Ukraine, with some lawmakers calling for Ukraine to compensate Germany for the economic damage caused by the sabotage. Member of the German Bundestag Alice Weidel is demanding that Ukraine pay for the damage and stop receiving aid payments from German taxpayers. Meanwhile, the German government has stopped new military aid to Ukraine as part of its plan to reduce spending, and an arrest warrant has been issued for a Ukrainian citizen suspected of involvement in the pipeline sabotage plot. Could Democrats make Kamala Harris president before the election? The Hill opinion piece suggests that Democrats may attempt an October surprise by making Kamala Harris president before the election in November. With Joe Biden's health issues and low approval ratings, it's possible that he could be removed from office via the 25th Amendment or even resign himself. This move would allow Harris to take over as president for the remainder of the campaign, potentially boosting her chances of winning the election. While this scenario may seem far-fetched, some argue that it's a possibility given the surreal nature of the current presidential election cycle. House concludes President Biden actively participated in impeachable offenses except it's too late to impeach him. The Republican-led House committees have released a 291-page report alleging that President Joe Biden engaged in impeachable conduct by helping to enrich his family with millions of dollars through various business schemes. The report states that Biden participated in a conspiracy to monetize his office, attending dinners and speaking on the phone with foreign associates who paid tens of millions of dollars to the Biden family and their business partners. The committees also accuse Hunter Biden of using his father's official position as vice president to secure favorable outcomes in foreign business dealings and legal proceedings. Additionally, the report alleges that President Biden engaged in a cover-up by lying about his family's conduct, abusing his office, and defrauding the United States. American Airlines stuns by halting all Israel flights until April 2025. American Airlines has announced a lengthy extension of its suspension in flights to Tel Aviv, Israel, until March 29, 2025. The airline had previously announced a temporary pause in service due to ongoing fears of the outbreak of a bigger regional war involving Iran and Hezbollah attacking Israel. American Airlines' decision is a longer cancellation than any other airline, including those in Europe, as a result of the Gaza war and related fears of regional escalation and spillover. The airline will continue to work with partner airlines to assist customers traveling between Israel and European cities with service to the United States. Ukraine destroys third bridge in Russia's Kursk. Zelensky stresses he'll keep territory. Ukraine has attacked and damaged a third bridge in the Kursk region of Russia, following the destruction of two other bridges earlier last week. The attacks are intended to disrupt Russian supply lines and make troop movements more difficult. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that destroying as much Russian war potential as possible is now Ukraine's primary task. The country has also taken dozens of Russian border guards prisoner, which will be used in future prisoner swaps. Meanwhile, Russia claims to have a 5-to-1 advantage in terms of prisoners of war held by both sides. When presidents kill, President Joe Biden reaffirmed his authority to kill individuals in other countries without due process, relying on the near-certainty standard created by the George W. Bush administration in 2002. This standard is not grounded in law and allows for subjective judgment about who constitutes a terrorist. The use of drones to kill persons overseas has continued across 4 presidencies, with each president making their own rules without congressional or judicial oversight. Key bombshells on Kursk incursion planning come to light. Ukraine claims to hold at least 80 Russian settlements, and over 120,000 Russian citizens have been forced to evacuate Kursk Oblast in an ongoing cross-border operation that has left Kremlin leaders stunned. Planning for the operation had reportedly been underway for at least a year, raising questions about whether United States intelligence or the Pentagon knew about it, given their close collaboration with Ukrainian counterparts since the start of the war in February 2022. Drug company announces it will produce millions of monkeypox vaccines by next year. The World Health Organization declared a public health emergency due to an outbreak of the Mpox virus, also known as monkeypox, which has spread from the Democratic Republic of Congo to other African nations. The strain appears more deadly than another variant that caused a worldwide outbreak in 2022 and 2023. Bavarian Nordic, a vaccine maker, saw its shares increase by about 49% after announcing it could provide 10 million doses of the vaccine, with 300,000 ready for distribution immediately. United Kingdom Pride charity founder arrested on 37 charges involving child sex abuse. A 40-year-old founder of the charity organization, Pride in Surrey, Stephen Ireland, has been arrested on 37 charges related to child sexual abuse, including 6 counts of conspiracy to sexually assault a child. The arrest follows a trend of LGBT activist groups being exposed as havens for pedophiles. In November, LGBT activist journalist Slade Somer was arrested on charges of possessing and distributing child pornography, and in British Columbia, Sean Edward Leonard Gravels, the board president of the North Peace Pride Society, was arrested on similar charges. The cases highlight the need for scrutiny of these groups, which often operate behind a curtain of charity and community organizations with immunity to criticism due to their ties with leftist governments. These are the countries that use ChatGPT the most. The general public's perception of generative artificial intelligence technology has been assessed through Boston Consulting Group's CCI Global Consumer Sentiment Survey 2023. The survey found that India has the highest share of people using ChatGPT, with 45% of respondents in the country utilizing the tool, likely due to its large number of information technology jobs where ChatGPT can be a valuable asset. A correlation emerged between younger countries and higher ChatGPT usage, possibly because of a more tech-savvy population. Overall, about 40% of survey respondents expressed excitement about artificial intelligence, while 28% were conflicted and 29% were concerned. Federal appeals court reverses decision, keeps Alaska salmon fishery open. A federal appeals court has reversed a lower court ruling that would have shut down the Southeast Alaska Chinook salmon fishery, which is a significant source of income for local fishermen. The Ninth United States Circuit Court of Appeals found that a key permit issued by the National Marine Fisheries Service was valid and allowed the summer and winter harvests of Chinook salmon to continue. This decision allows the fishery to remain open while the National Marine Fisheries Service revises its management plan, which had been found to contain some flaws. The ruling is expected to bring relief to Alaska's fishing communities, who had argued that closing the fishery would have devastating economic consequences. Israel sought to bypass foreign agent law to spread propaganda in United States. The Guardian. The Israeli government sought legal advice to bypass United States federal law governing the spreading of propaganda among the United States population by foreign state. Leaked documents show that Israeli officials proposed creating a new United States nonprofit to continue Israel's activities in the United States while avoiding scrutiny under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which requires disclosure of foreign-backed lobbying campaigns. The Israeli government was worried about registering as a foreign agent due to concerns it would damage the reputation of American groups receiving funding from Israel and force them to meet transparency requirements. Recalibrating advanced placement exams is defining deviancy down. The College Board's Advanced Placement Program is facing controversy over its revised scoring process, which some argue is an example of defining deviancy down. The new process, introduced in 2022, aims to align AP exam scores with college grades by redefining what constitutes a passing score. Critics claim that this has led to runaway grade inflation, with average student scores increasing significantly in several subjects, and that the effort lacks public transparency. Supporters argue that the change is necessary to reflect the growing number of students taking the AP program, which generated almost $500 million in revenue for the College Board in 2022. Stock index cast-offs have delivered enduring and outsized returns, quant researchers find. A new study by Research Affiliates LLC suggests that investors can profit from buying stocks that have been ejected from market cap-weighted indexes. The research found that these deleted stocks tend to outperform the market over the next several years, creating a compelling opportunity for investors who hold on to them for at least 5 years. Between 1991 and 2022, deletions traded at a 26% discount to the Standard & Poor's 500 in terms of their price-to-earnings ratio, while additions fetched an 83% premium. The strategy is ultimately a small-cap value play, as many index deletions are sparked by companies no longer making the large-cap cut. Democratic National Committee kicks off, one pandering protests and President of the United States. The Democratic National Convention is set to take place from Monday, August 19th to Thursday, August 22nd in Chicago, where Vice President Kamala Harris will formally accept the nomination for president. The event is expected to feature speeches from various Democrat notables, including former President Joe Biden, who will call into the convention via video. The party will also formally adopt their draft platform, which includes demands for a federal codification of Roe v. Wade and calls for higher taxation of wealthy individuals and corporations. However, the event may be disrupted by expected protests from interest groups on the left, who are demanding that the Democratic National Committee change its stance on Israel. Was Qatar secretly mediating a partial Russian-Ukrainian ceasefire before Kursk? Russia may have considered agreeing not to target Ukraine's energy infrastructure in exchange for a partial ceasefire before the Ukrainian sneak attack against Kursk. This deal could have softened Russia's image ahead of new peace talks and given it diplomatic leverage without curtailing its campaign in Donbass. Ukraine, on the other hand, could have kept Russia's guard down during this process to facilitate an unprecedentedly risky gamble aimed at staving off seemingly inevitable defeat. The attack may have been part of a larger strategy for Ukraine to seize and hold some Russian pre-2014 land through the winter, possibly aided by Interventional North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in its defensive support if necessary. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. refutes report that he approached Harris for cabinet position. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., an independent presidential candidate, refuted a report by the Washington Post that claimed he would drop out of the race and endorse Vice President Kamala Harris in exchange for a cabinet position if she wins in November. He denied seeking a meeting with Harris or asking for a cabinet position, stating instead that he wants to meet with all candidates to discuss unifying the country. Kennedy has repeatedly expressed his willingness to engage with opposing candidates, media outlets, and podcasters who do not share his views, despite concerns from Democrats and Republicans that he could take away votes from their respective presidential candidates. IDF expands Gaza operations as Blinken arrives for ninth visit to Israel. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in Israel for his ninth visit since October 7th as part of an ongoing effort to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza and secure the release of hostages. Blinken is expected to meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, Foreign Minister Israel Katz, and President Isaac Herzog. Despite claims by the Biden administration that they are at the goal line of achieving a truce deal, no official agreement has been reached, with both sides blaming each other for the stalemate. Netanyahu has insisted that he will not order troops out of Gaza until Hamas is destroyed, while Hamas demands a full Israeli military withdrawal as a condition for releasing hostages. The war and humanitarian crisis in Gaza continue to escalate, with the United States approving large defense packages for Israel and U.S.-supplied bombs contributing to the destruction. European Union defense under pressure after Germany freezes new military aid for Ukraine. Germany's finance minister Christian Lindner halted all new requests for military aid to Ukraine due to a domestic budgetary crisis, according to a report by the German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. The move has sparked concerns about Europe's ability to support Ukraine in its conflict with Russia. European defense stocks fell in response to the news, with companies such as Saab, Rheinmetall, and BAE Systems experiencing significant declines. The Goldman Sachs EU Defense Index dropped 2% on the report, adding to mounting resistance in the EU defense bubble. Morgan Stanley, this is what Powell will be looking at before he delivers his Jackson Hole speech. Federal Reserve Chair Powell is expected to outline the medium-term strategy for the Fed at the Jackson Hole Conference, focusing on sustaining economic expansion while aiming to return to the 2% inflation target. Despite signs of slowing economic activity and a cooling job market, Powell will likely emphasize that policy will still be tight even after interest rate cuts. The recent rise in unemployment is not seen as a harbinger of recession due to the unique characteristics of this labor market cycle, with demand for labor slowing but firings remaining low, and an increase in labor supply amplifying the signal from the unemployment rate. Youth unemployment high in South Asia. Youth unemployment in Bangladesh stood at 15.7% in 2023, above the world average of 13.8% and the low and middle income average of 14.1%. This has been cited as one of the core drivers of unrest in the country, which led to weeks of protests and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina stepping down from office. According to a report by the Japan Times, roughly 40% of Bangladeshi youth are not in education, employment, or training, including those no longer looking for work or registered unemployed, with stagnant job growth in the private sector making public sector jobs more attractive. Futures flat as Jackson Hole looms, dollar tumbles as yen soars. The past week saw the United States economy exhibit signs of disinflation and resilience, which boosted optimism in equity markets. The consumer price index print was softer than expected, while retail sales data were strong, supporting the narrative of a soft landing for the economy. As a result, the Standard & Poor's 500 index rose by 3.93% over the week, its largest weekly gain since November 2023. Meanwhile, the yield on the United States 10-year Treasury retreated to 3.88%, and the broad dollar index fell to its lowest level since January. No signs of a consumer recession, but hedge funds are selling aggressively. Morgan Stanley predicts that the consumer will not slow down significantly despite concerns about tight monetary policy and spending normalization. According to Sarah Wolf of Morgan Stanley, the fundamental drivers of consumption remain supportive of steady spending in 2024. The retail sales data for July confirms that buying power remains intact, indicating neither a re-acceleration nor a slump in consumer spending. As stocks soared last week, hedge funds resumed selling Goldman Prime brokerage. The United States equities market experienced its best week since November 2023 following last week's growth concerns. Benign inflation data and better-than-feared growth data points from Walmart and retail sales helped the S&P 500 recover its 50-day moving average, driving it to within 2% of all-time highs. While commodity trading advisors are buying stocks again, hedge funds are dumping after last week's rally, with $40 billion in buyback orders alongside corporate buybacks expected until September 6th. Goldman's top tech trader, after a remarkable run for the National Association of Securities Dealers automated quotations. Where do we go from here? The Nasdaq 100 index experienced an intense week of price action, ending the week on a 7-day winning streak and closing out its best week of the year. The index rose approximately 550 basis points last week, marking its best 7-day stretch in 2 years. This strong performance occurred during a quieter week of activity, with the CBOE Volatility Index falling back below 15. Peter Schiff, the Federal Reserve, still isn't data-driven. Peter Schiff analyzed recent Producer Price Index (PPI) and Consumer Price Index (CPI) reports, predicting a rate hike in September despite expectations for a rate cut next month. He noted that the PPI report may indicate margin pressure on American businesses due to increased costs, which could negatively impact earnings. The CPI report showed a meager improvement of 0.1% over 13 months, which Schiff argues is not a sign of progress and suggests that interest rates are too low. Additionally, Schiff commented on an interview between Donald Trump and Elon Musk, agreeing with Trump's statement that the Department of Education is unnecessary and criticizing the United Auto Workers Union for its role in exporting the American auto industry. He also attributed high housing and education costs to government intervention, arguing that free markets bring quality up and price down, while governments do the opposite. Japanese stress reviving, will it spill over again? Becomes Japanese stress reviving, will it spill over again? The Japanese yen reversed sharply along the steep trend line and the 21-day moving average, forming two massive candles in a row. This currency remains highly volatile. Are venture capitalists now better at podcasting and biohacking than producing returns? More than 40% of venture capital funds that were established in 2018 have not made any distributions yet. A daily $10 billion of unemotional buying. Commodity trading advisors have moved from being massive sellers to net buyers globally, while the corporate bid remains robust. It is projected that commodity trading advisors will buy approximately $5 billion per day in the United States over the next week, combining with a roughly equal daily corporate bid of around $5 billion to result in approximately $10 billion of non-discretionary and unemotional demand during one of the most illiquid weeks of the year. Key events this week: Jackson Hole Federal Open Market Committee minutes and jobs revisions. The Jackson Hole Economic Symposium is the main event this week for investors, with Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's speech expected to provide signals on the timing and pace of rate cuts. Markets have approached the symposium in a better mood than initially anticipated, following extreme volatility seen at the start of August, which now seems like a distant memory. The Standard & Poor's 500 is on its best 7-day run since October 2022, with gains of 6.82%, and has moved to within 2% of its all-time high. Meanwhile, markets are pricing 95 basis points of Federal Reserve rate cuts across the remaining 3 meetings this year and 200 basis points of easing by next October. The wild ride of S&P 500 volatility and dealer pain. The Standard & Poor's 500 Index SPX 5-day realized volatility is compared to the 1-month period in the chart. The round trip in SPX 5-day realized volatility versus the 1-month period is shown in the chart, highlighting changes in market volatility over time.